Good morning. I'm Jeremy Tate and this is Turf Life. So I've been pondering starting this YouTube channel for a little while. I think mainly I want to do it because I want to help people, and I want to help my customers have a place to go to get information, good information. I want to help other turf grass managers out there that maybe haven't reached the point to have all the experience that I have, and I feel like I can offer a lot of knowledge on the subject. And I also want to do it just to mainly glorify the Lord, who I love. And I am a turf grass manager that is a Christian, and I think we're called to serve our purpose, and I love my purpose. Outside of that, you know, I've been in the turf grass business for 20 years now. I started at Mississippi State in the turf grass program in 2005, and I worked at the MSU golf course. That's when I started working there part-time while I was in school, and ever since then I've had my hands in one way or another in turf grass, and I love it. It's challenging, very challenging at times. You're dealing with Mother Nature. You're dealing with different microenvironments and different yards. Every season, every year is different. There's always new challenges, always new obstacles. But I enjoy these customers that I have, and that call me and want answers of why their yard isn't doing well and what they can do. And I want to help folks. I think as long as and if you're out there thinking about starting a business, you keep that as the core of your business, I think you'll be successful. And so I'm gonna compile some videos. I'm just gonna do it, you know, as I go, and bring it up from time to time and show you all what I do on a daily basis. Right now, I'm just dropped my son off, headed to the office to get one of my men started. One of my men is off. I run a weed control fertilization business, and I also consult and help manage small country club, and we'll get into that later. Work on irrigation a little bit, drainage a little bit, lay facade from time to time. Not in the full-blown landscaping world. I used to do some of that, but I've really kind of tailor-made my business to be very specific towards the weed control, fertilization, and just trying to revitalize yards and keep yards clean and pretty and healthy. So I'm about to pop in the office here in my little hometown of Sturgis, small community. I got a little office over here, and I'm gonna load some yards for the day and get my man started, and I'll get back with y'all real quick. All right, this first episode is gonna be all about the basics. I've got this this property right here across from my office that I'm gonna help the person I rent the building from. I'm gonna help her clean this up, and so this is a good property for me to show you and kind of show my thoughts on it and what I would do. And so we're sitting here in the second day of spring right now in north central Mississippi, which we're in the kind of on the edge of the transition zone, if I remember correctly. And so the transition zone is, you know, basically where we're at. If you keep going further north from us, you get into where cool season plants and things have a better ability to survive. And so, for instance, in the transition zone where I'm at, St. Augustine has really took a beating the last 3, 4, 5 years, because for us, we've had pretty cold winters. 2 winters ago, we had somewhat of an ice storm here, And then this past winter, we hit single digits 2 or 3 times. So St. Augustine, a lot of St. Augustine yards haven't done as well because they do much better down south. Not that St. Augustine can't survive here, because it can when you treat it right and do it right, but it has struggled, and there's many yards that are struggling coming out. Many St. Augustine, a lot of centipede, what I call mixed grass yards out in the county that are non-irrigated and that are mowing too low. So that's what this episode is going to be all about, the basics. And so let me show you this property here. So this is, like I said, it's just it's not really our typical property, but it's a good example. So this is Bermuda grass that obviously has not had any fall pre-emerge, and actually it's a decent stand of Bermuda grass, and it's a pretty good little growing environment, and I believe I can clean this up pretty easy. And how I'll go about doing that is I'll do a pre-post first, and I'll try to do it right away before crabgrass germinates, and it's about to germinate. One good thing that has been done right here, this is a non-irrigated property, and that's so important because they're mowing it high. Why do you want to mow it high? The higher you mow, the longer your roots are, the greater chance that you're going to survive a drought, the greater chance that you're going to survive a winter with the kind of temperatures we had. So the Bermuda grass here is probably going to thrive. One of the biggest things I've ran into year after year, especially this year, I looked at 2 or 3 yards yesterday out in the county, and big yards, big properties, and they want me to spray it, and I tell them I can't. They're 90% weeds. Why are they 90% weeds? They were mowing it too low under a non-irrigated situation, and when the drought hit in the fall, summer and fall, which is the worst time, it went into the winter really weak, and then the grass died over winter because we hit single-digit temperatures, and now it's just nothing but full of weeds. So the only recommendation I can have for those people is to, this year, mow high, mow frequently. Okay, so frequency is good during the growing season. You want to mow at minimum once a week when you hit the full-blown growing season to help thicken that grass up, but you want to mow it high, even if you're going out there and just knocking the tops off of the weeds. So it works twofold. One, the weeds do not like to be mowed. It stresses them out. And then it promotes growth of the good grass, the grass you're trying to establish in your yard. The other thing they can do is fertilize. And so if they're trying to grow their yard in, mow frequently, mow high, and fertilize during the growing season. That is going to greatly help these people that are non-irrigated. When you're irrigated, it's a whole different situation because you can keep the grass healthy during the drought and during the hot summer months. And for our area, you really only have a very short window of time to grow your grass. You basically have like 4 months, 4.5 months, something like that, to truly grow grass. And during those months, you got to take advantage and get it as thick as possible. And how do you do that? You mow properly, you fertilize, and you water, and take advantage of that heat, because the Bermuda grass and the warm season grasses love the heat, but they don't like it without water, just like us. So that's what I wanted to show you. I'll bring up some other stuff throughout the day. I'm going to try to hit, I'm going to try to hit the very, very basics. With this particular property, like I said, I would, I'm going to do a pre and I'm going to do a post. The pre-emerge I'll use will probably be some type of prodiamine, because Bermuda responds well to it. It's great on preventing crabgrass. I'll probably put out a pound of prodiamine, and then I'll probably come with a metsulfuron. Some know it as like an MSM turf, and I'll probably have like a 3-way product that has 2,4-D and dicamba. And so the 3-way product I probably won't go extremely hot with it because most of these weeds are about to start turning on their own. But you could, because this property, this in particular property, it has enough good grass, Bermuda grass, that you could do that. Not every property I could say that, but because this was mowed high, it survived the drought, and I think I could clean it up pretty good by midsummer. It ought to be looking real good. I'll try to come back and show y'all a before and after. All right, so I'm here at a customer's house and just going back to the basics. And so this is about right grass for the right situation. So I have this customer, and he's called. He doesn't have a very good front yard, and his backyard is deeply shaded. And so what I'm about to show you is the backyard on the south side has large oak trees, and it is obviously on the south side of the house. Why that matters is because when the sun lays down in the fall, winter, early spring, it lays down in the south. And so that causes areas that will not get any sun. And in the middle of the summer, those areas, when the sun is directly over your head, they'll get sun. And then in the fall, it'll get so shaded out that if you don't have the right grass, the right grass in the right situation, it'll thin out. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So that's his front yard right there, and they had a good stand of Bermuda at one time, but the irrigation system, which we're gonna work on that. You can see right there, he's got a main line leak that I found. Hasn't been ran in several years, and so this grass has just been neglected and has thinned out. I can bring a lot of it back if we can get head-to-head coverage and save him some money on some sod. There's actually, what's funny is there's a little bit of St. Augustine on the north side of this tree, which makes sense because this stays so shaded, and so the St. Augustine has survived and hung on. So I'll be working on that, but I wanted to show you this backyard and what I'm talking about. See, the backyard is so deeply shaded, you'll never get Bermuda grass survive back there. So my recommendation is going to be Zoysia Palisades. You can get St. Augustine. From here, you got to truck it from down south, and it can get pretty pricey trying to truck that little bit of grass because it's not a very big yard. So here's his backyard. You can see how deeply shaded it is. So again, when the sun falls down to the south, fall, winter, early spring, in the fall it starts falling, and then it starts working its way back over your head. Middle of the summer, he may get a little filtered sun. He's got these trees hanging over, and so with all the leaves and stuff, it's not going to do great. You could always, in this area, you could do some fescue, ryegrass, and the vast majority of the year you're going to have some green grass, but then it's going to burn out July and August, even with good watering and everything. So you just have to deal with not having it. So what I try to do, I tell people, limb their trees up, take as many limbs off as they can, especially the ones that are hanging over and protruding out in the yard. For every limb you take out, you think about how many leaves that is and how much more sun you could get. And then I try to recommend the right grass for the right, situation, or, as I always say, the micro environment. And so he's going to want, what I would do is to put down Zoysia Palisades. It's very shade tolerant, and I would grow it high. I would make sure it gets good water and good fertilizer, and I wouldn't treat it very heavily with chemicals, because when you spray with chemicals, you're going to inhibit the good grass. You're inhibiting growth. It's an inhibitor. And so you have to be careful with shady spots. You have to be careful with thin areas. You got to treat it very sensitively. And I'll get more into that when we start going through the chemicals and different things that I use. After the end of this episode, I'm going to kind of summarize everything. I may provide links, and I'm gonna provide you know, the different rates for the different stuffs that I use and what I go at. And it's going to be a periodic thing. We're just going to go through this season. Right now we're in spring, and the only thing really growing is weeds, but the grass is fixing to start popping here soon, the good grass. Here I talked about how I wanted you to mow high, and so real quick I wanted to go over some specifics about that. So your height of cut and your actual height of cut, all your mowers will tell you that you're mowing at 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches, or 4 inches. What you need to do is mow your grass and then take a measurement of your actual height of cut and get down to the soil and then find out what your actual height of cut is. I'm gonna let this guy pass. Huh? That's right.
Hey, mailman.
There's our mailman. All right, so you want to go to the actual height of cut. And so go down to the soil and see what your actual height of cut. All right, in this situation, I have a mixed grass yard. And so summer months, I'm going to grow it really high. I want to mow it at 2 3/4 inches and 3 inches. So that the roots are long, so that we're protected from the drought, because it's non-irrigated. This is all about non-irrigated yards, okay? Same thing in Bermuda or anything else if it's non-irrigated. If it's irrigated, you can go lower. In this particular situation that's covered in weeds and henbit, thistle, wild onion, garlic, annual ryegrass, I'm gonna put out Simazine and a 4-way product that has flutolanil in it and doesn't have 2,4-D. I'll get more into details about that at the end of the video, but one application with that is safe on St. Augustine, centipede, mixed grass, and a good application of that will clean this yard up pretty quick. That's it. All right, so the things that I hit on in the first episode, this is me going to break it down in the quickest, most concise manner I can for the good information to be a good turf grass manager. So these are the biggest points in growing good grass and not growing weeds, and also not killing grass or turf and killing weeds, okay? So when somebody calls me and they got a problem with their yard, or I have questions online, they have symptoms. The symptoms are typically, the biggest ones I see, is my grass is super thin and looks weak, it looks terrible. I have a bunch of weeds, or I have disease. Those are the 3 things I see the most. And those are symptoms of an overall problem. So why do I have weeds? Why is my grass thin? And why do I have disease? Okay? The number one thing I see in our area and with my clients and the people that call me, their biggest problem is their shade. It's typically, I said, shade versus sun, okay? Most of the time, it's too much shade. Even the shade tolerant grasses like a Zoysia palisades or a St. Augustine that's very shade tolerant, it's got to have some sun. The sun is where the turf grass gets its food. Through photosynthesis, it creates carbohydrates, takes in CO2, creates carbohydrates, spits out oxygen. It's a beautiful thing, but you got to have sun. If you don't have some sun or some filtered sun, you're not going to get the grass to grow. That's the number one thing. I showed y'all that previously. Overhanging limbs, lots of leaves, it's not getting good sun. Which direction is the turf grass you're trying to grow? Which direction is the sun facing and where is it hitting it at? So if I have a front yard that is facing the north, more than likely where I'm at, it's going to be thin because the sun dropping down in the fall, winter, and spring, and it's not getting good sunlight, and it thins out every fall, winter, and spring. Whereas if I have faced on the south, if my front yard, my front door is facing the south, it's usually good thick turf because it's getting plenty of sun. And so that's the number one thing I see. What do I tell people to do? Limb up their trees, all the overhanging, arching limbs. Limb them up. Phone's going low battery. Limb up the trees. Cut any trees that you can, that you want. You can either have dense shade or you can have grass. You can either have trees in some instances or you can have grass. You typically can have both. So that's just decisions you got to make. Shade versus sun. And then if you are filtered shade or filtered sun, you need to go with St. Augustine or some kind of zoysia. You don't need to pick Bermuda or centipede. It's going to thin out. Okay, that's the number one thing I see. So look for that in your yard before you look for anything else. Second thing, poor soil quality. That can be anything from it's not draining well, it's holding water. It can be anything from compaction. Those are probably the two things I see the most. It's either a very small backyard with dogs running over an area or kids playing in the backyard over and over. You can relieve that compaction through aerification. Either that or your pH is too low. If it's centipede, it can be too high. So you can lime, you can do lime, and you can aerify. Those two things will help in most situations. If you have a drainage problem, you probably need to put in a French drain or figure out where the water's stopping and get it to a low point. You do not have a drainage problem if after a flash flood 24 hours later you don't have standing water. If you have standing water 24 hours after a flash flood, then you have a drainage problem. So poor soil quality, pH is too low most of the time for Bermuda and zoysia, so get it up with some lime. I would say equal to that is the actual height cut of the grass, what I showed y'all in the previous video, especially in my non-irrigated yards, that and frequency. But in my non-irrigated yards, people are mowing too low and not mowing frequent enough. And so when you mow low, your roots are low. The lower you mow, the more maintenance it causes. And so you've got to raise your mowing height so your roots will be longer so it can handle the stress without getting the water, and it can handle the winters of the low digit temperatures with ice that we've been having in our area. Okay? And that kind of goes back to the shade versus sun, just making sure you have the right grass for your situation. And so know where you're at and know your situation. Know your zone. We're in zone 7. I'm in the transition zone right there. If you call and ask me and you're across the country or I see a question, all they do is post a picture and say, my Bermuda grass is not doing well. I'm like, where are you at? And if they're in the transition zone, and depending on the time of the year, is gonna help me know how to advise them further. And so St. Augustine, centipede, all that grows. Bermuda grows really well right here. The St. Augustine, as you go further north, it's not doing well like I told you in the transition. Like I was saying, St. Augustine is taking a beating in the transition zone in my area due to the extremely cold temperatures. It does better down south. Bermuda grass, zoysia grass, centipede and all that probably does pretty good in the transition zone, probably less likely on the centipede. So know, right grass for the right situation. Height of cut, mow frequently at the proper height for your grass. You can scalp it down early spring, but as it gets warmer, bring up the height of cut. Bring up your actual height of cut as it gets warmer for non-irrigated yards especially, so that your roots get longer, so you can have a healthier turf, so it can withstand the drought, it can withstand the cold temperatures. Okay? The more frequently you mow, the healthier, the thicker the turf. I recommend Bermuda grass and zoysia 2 times a week during the primary growing season, especially if you got water and it's growing fast. It'll thicken up and it'll knock those weeds out. All right, last but not least, water. Obviously, not everybody can water their lawn during the drought season. In our area, you really only have 4.5 months. You got June, July, August, part of September to really thicken up and grow your grass. Most of the time we have some kind of drought in July or August, and you're losing ground if you're not watering. If you do have irrigation, water deep and infrequent. So during the primary growing season, I tell people water twice a week, water very deep, let it sit for 3 or 4 days, and then water again. More times than not, people are watering too much, watering every day of the week, watering 3 or 4 days a week, and that makes their roots look really short because all the water is standing on top of the ground and the roots are growing up. And so you want to water deep so the water goes down low in the soil, and so the roots follow it down low in the soil. So water deep, water infrequent. That's another big one that I see. Even clients that have irrigation, I'm like, well, what's your watering schedule? And their water schedule's messed up. You need to water early in the morning before the sun comes up. Knock the dew off the grass, which I call eutation water, that helps cause diseases. And also, if you water early in the morning, gives it time to get down in the soil and really be taken up by the plant when the day comes. Water in the middle of the day, a lot of it gets evaporated into the atmosphere. And so you get all this right, you get your shade versus your sun tolerance right, you limb up trees, get as much sun as possible, have good soil, aerified soil with a good pH, lime if you need to, have your height of cut right for your type of grass, centipede and St. Augustine. I definitely recommend mixed grass. I definitely recommend 3 inches, 3 1/4. Mow frequently as you can, minimum once a week. That'll help thicken up your grass. You get into the Bermudas and the zoysias, some of them you really can mow lower. Hybrid Bermudas, man, you can mow them super low. But if you're going to do that, you're going to need to fertilize more, you're going to need to water more, and you're going to need to keep an eye on it. And a lot of customers don't water properly if they have the chance. If you can't water, certainly, I don't care if it's Bermuda, zoysia, what it is, if you don't have irrigation, mow it high, 3 inches or greater, 3 1/4, okay? And so just for the weed control, these are some of the staples that I use. It certainly isn't all I use, but these, 4 chemicals are probably used most frequently by me, especially in the spring. And so the first one is prodiamine. Don't worry about the trade name. Just worry about the active ingredient. There's plenty of prodiamine products out there, liquid and dry formula. This is a dry formula one. I do 1 pound to 1.5 pounds per acre, spring and or fall. And so what I like to do is in the spring is combine these chemicals. Bermuda, zoysia, really good. I would hesitate in St. Augustine and centipede just because over time it can start hurting your roots because it is a big time inhibitor, and over time it can really hurt your roots. Unless you're down south where you got sandy soils, may not be as big a problem. You got thick soils, I'd be careful with this, even though it's labeled and at lower rates it's probably fine. But what I do is I go to Simazine, and that is Princeps, the trade name. Simazine is the active ingredient. That's what you want to look at. And so this is kind of a pre-post, and I like it on the centipede and St. Augustine mixed grass yards, carpet grass yards. You can do that and combine it with these other 2 chemicals I'm about to show you at 16 to 32 ounces spring and fall. And it does a pretty good job, and it's safe. It's actually safe on sprigs. So it apparently is pretty darn safe on roots. And so I like this in my mixed grass, centipede, St. Augustine. I also will put it in with prodiamine, depending on the situation in the spring. I may do 16 ounces or 20 ounces with the prodiamine on that first app in January/February, because it helps clean up some annual grasses that you can get. And then I tank mix the Simazine or the prodiamine with, I like Change Up. It's a 4-way product, doesn't have 2,4-D. It has phytonil, so it's really safe without the 2,4-D. on the Centipede and St. Augustine. That's why I like it. I'm not sure if there's others with the same exact active ingredients as Change Up. But it's a good product. I really like it. Good in the summertime on buttonweed. It's a safe product, like I said. If you can't find that or get that, you can find Trimec. You can find Enrun, Triplet. There's a ton of different names for it. I do 16 to 20 ounces of that, tank mix it with prodiamine or simazine. At these kind of rates, it's pretty darn safe on all your warm season grasses. This is 8 ounce to 16 ounces per acre Change Up. And so I will also tank mix with MSM Turf, metsulfuron. Lots of trade names for it. And so I do 0.35 to half an ounce spring and fall. And so on one of my first applications, if I'm really trying to clean a yard up, I may do a pound of prodiamine with 8 ounces of Change Up with a half an ounce of MSM Turf plus surfactant. That's a good concoction. One application of that is going to get you pretty clean. Bermuda, Zoysia, St. Augustine. I'd be careful on the Centipede, going heavy with the MSM Turf. I'd back that down to 0.35 ounces, even though it's labeled. So that's just some staples of what I do on the weed control chemical side. As the year rocks on, different times of year, even in the spring, I use a plethora of other things. And so I'll continue to show what I use and how I do it and the rates I go out. We're going to have further videos, calibration. I'm going to show you super simple ways to calibrate your backpack sprayer for you home lawn guys. I started my business with a backpack sprayer, a solo backpack sprayer that had a dual nozzle stuck on the end, and I started out like that for the first year or two. Not too bad in a small yard, 5,000 square feet. You get on into the half acre, 3/4 of an acre, it's a lot of filling up. But I'm going to show you how to calibrate sprayers, backpack sprayers, pump up sprayers, zero turn sprayers, John Deere Gator golf course sprayers. Any kind of sprayer you can think of, I'm going to show you super simple ways to calibrate those things where it's just not overly complicated. I'm also going to get into the individual grasses of what we do and what we recommend and how we treat the individual grasses a little bit different, because I do treat them different. And it's depending on their microenvironment situation, I may treat them totally different than some of our other yards. And so we really try to customize what we're doing in our clients' yards. And so there they are, the four things out there to the right there. I got pre. Establish that pre-emerge, prodiamine and or simazine, spring and fall. Do all these other things. So man, if you have thin grass, lots of weeds and disease, I would check your shade to sun tolerance of the type of grass you have. Bermuda grass loves the sun. St. Augustine has some shade tolerance. Zoysias have some shade tolerance. Centipede wants the sun, lots of sun. And so when I say lots, you need a minimum, I would say 7, 8, 9 hours, for your Bermuda, 9, 10 hours. The shade tolerant grasses, you can maybe get away with some filtered sun or maybe like 6 hours, something like that. But check, do a soil test. Lots of extension nations out there, lots of ways to take soil tests, see where your pH is at, see if your soil is compact, and relieve that compaction. Proper height of cut, actual height of cut, frequency, mow frequently, water once, twice a week, deep and infrequent, and if you don't have irrigation, mow high.